Everyone knows the name James Bond. He is the man in the suit with a gun, the spy who drives fast cars, drinks martinis, and always saves the day. But what many people do not know is that James Bond was not only a character in books and movies. He was based on real people, real spies who lived in dangerous times and took real risks. Among them, one man stands out. His name was William Stephenson, and he may have been the true inspiration for James Bond. The story begins not in Hollywood, but in Canada, during the early 20th century. William Stephenson was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in 1897. He did not come from a rich family. He was adopted as a baby, and his childhood was not easy. But from a young age, he showed great intelligence and curiosity. He loved machines and radios, and he dreamed of doing big things. When World War I began, Stephenson joined the army. He became a pilot and flew over Europe. In one mission, his plane was shot down, and he became a prisoner of war in Germany. But he never gave up. After the war, he went back to Canada. He became an inventor and businessman. He worked on early radio technology and started a company that sold radios and other equipment. He became rich and successful. But even then, he was always interested in secrets and technology. That interest would change his life. When World War II started in 1939, the world needed spies. Britain was fighting alone against Nazi Germany, and it needed help. Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, wanted someone who could create a secret spy network in North America. He needed someone clever, brave, and loyal. He chose William Stephenson. This is when the real spy story begins. Churchill gave Stephenson the job of running British intelligence in the Western Hemisphere. Stephenson opened an office in New York City, right near Rockefeller Center. But the office was a cover. It looked like a regular news agency, but inside it was the heart of British spying in America. The office had a special name, British Security Coordination, or BSC. From this office, Stephenson and his team worked to help Britain win the war. They collected information. They used secret radios to send messages. They trained American agents in the art of spying. They even worked with Hollywood to make films that supported the war effort. But most important, Stephenson helped convince the United States to join the war. At that time, many Americans did not want to fight. Stephenson's secret work helped change their minds. He did not work alone. He had many agents. Some were diplomats. Some were writers. Some were even actors. And there was one writer in particular who paid close attention to everything Stephenson did. His name was Ian Fleming. Ian Fleming was a British naval officer during the war. He worked in British intelligence and often met with Stephenson. Fleming admired him. He saw how Stephenson lived. He saw how clever he was, how brave, how stylish. Stephenson was not a man who made a lot of noise, but people listened to him. He always knew the right thing to say. He knew secrets that no one else knew. Fleming later said that William Stephenson was one of the great secret warriors of the world. After the war, Fleming began writing novels. He created a character named James Bond. Bond was strong. He was smart. He used gadgets. He had charm. And he worked in the shadows. Many people believe that William Stephenson was the real-life model for Bond. The famous number, 007, may even have been inspired by a British signal code Stephenson used during the war. There were other possible models for James Bond too. Some say Fleming was inspired by himself. He had been a spy, and he enjoyed the good life. Others say Bond was based on a man named Dusko Popov, a real double agent who worked for the British. Popov was handsome, rich, and famous for gambling, just like Bond. But Popov did not have the long, secret career that Stephenson had. Stephenson did not like fame. He lived quietly. He never spoke much about what he had done. That silence made him more mysterious. After the war, William Stephenson moved to Jamaica. He became a friend of Ian Fleming there too. Fleming wrote many of his Bond books on the island. When asked about Stephenson, Fleming said, "James Bond is a highly romanticized version of a real spy. The real thing, William Stephenson, was much more brave, more resourceful, and more quiet. It is easy to believe this. During the war, Stephenson trained hundreds of agents. He helped build the Secret Service in the United States. He worked closely with the people who would later create the CIA. Many called him the Quiet Canadian. Churchill once said, "Stephenson is the one man who is always ready to do what must be done, whatever the cost." He was not just a spy. He was a builder of secret empires. William Stephenson was a quiet man. But behind his calm face, he hid a powerful mind. His ideas helped shape the world of intelligence and espionage. In the 1940s, there were no smartphones, no satellites, no computers. Still, Stephenson created a spy network that was fast, modern, and very effective. He used radio waves, coded messages, and even invisible ink. And he trained his agents to think like scientists and move like shadows. He was the first person to bring British and American intelligence together. Before Stephenson, the United States and the United Kingdom did not share many secrets. But Stephenson knew they needed to work as one team. He helped the U.S. create the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. This group would later become the CIA. That means Stephenson did not just help win a war. He helped build the world's most powerful spy organization. He trained the men who trained the spies. Many of the things we now see in James Bond movies started with him. Hidden weapons, spy schools, fast cars with gadgets, and secret communication tools. These were not just fiction. Stephenson helped develop real versions of them. He worked with scientists and inventors. He believed that information was the most powerful weapon. And he made sure that his agents could find it, send it, and use it fast. Still, he did not work for fame or money. He worked to protect freedom. He believed that democracy had to fight back against dictators. Hitler and the Nazis were trying to control Europe. Stephenson saw how dangerous that was before many others. When the world looked away, he looked closely. When others stayed silent, he acted. At the time, there were German spies inside America. They were spreading lies in newspapers. They were trying to stop the U.S. from helping Britain. Stephenson and his agents found them and stopped them. But he had to do this quietly. He was a guest in America. He could not act like a soldier. He had to act like a whisper in the dark. And he was very good at that. He once said, "Nothing deceives like the truth." That was his style. He used truth and lies like tools. He could make the enemy believe anything. That skill made him one of the best intelligence officers in history. He never needed to carry a gun. His mind was sharper than any bullet. Still, the world did not know him. Ian Fleming knew. Fleming saw what Stephenson had built. When he began to write the Bond novels, he took ideas from real life. He remembered the small spy school in Canada that Stephenson helped create. It was called Camp X. There, agents learned to break codes, fight with their hands, and disappear without a sound. Some people say Camp X was the first real spy academy in the world. It was Bond's school, before Bond was ever written. And what about the name, James Bond? That came from a bird book. Yes, a real bird book. Ian Fleming liked birds. One day, he saw a book by an American bird expert. The expert's name was James Bond. Fleming liked how simple and serious the name sounded. So, he borrowed it. But the man behind the name, the brain, the danger, the cold courage, many believe that was William Stephenson. But Stephenson never said it. He never claimed to be the real Bond. In fact, he almost never talked about his spy work at all. For many years, people only guessed. Only later, after the war, did the stories come out. But even then, Stephenson stayed quiet. He moved to Bermuda with his wife. He lived in peace. He watched the world change. But the world did not forget him. Winston Churchill gave him one of the highest honors in Britain. He was made a knight. So, his full name became Sir William Stephenson. In Canada, he is still remembered as a hero. Schools and buildings carry his name. There is even a statue of him in Winnipeg, the city where he was born. But in many ways, he remains unknown, just as he preferred. If James Bond was real, he would not wear a tuxedo every day. He would not jump from buildings for fun. He would not smile for the cameras. No, the real Bond would be calm, careful, and silent. He would be a man like Stephenson. A man who could hide in plain sight. A man who could win a war without ever firing a shot. When you watch a Bond movie, it feels like a dream. But behind that dream is a real man. A man who helped win the greatest war of the 20th century. A man who used code instead of violence. A man who knew how to disappear. William Stephenson was not a hero in a film. He was a hero in the shadows. During World War II, spies did not wear tuxedos or drive cars with machine guns. They carried papers. They made fake passports. They talked to strangers in cafes. They asked the right questions and never gave the wrong answers. Spying was not a game. It was a matter of life and death. And no one knew that better than William Stephenson. Stephenson did not look dangerous. He had a calm voice. His suits were simple. He did not show off. But inside his mind, plans were always moving. He could sit at a dinner table and notice every detail. He could meet a stranger and quickly know if that person was friend or foe. His talent was not in chasing enemies, it was in understanding them. He once stopped a plan by Nazi agents to take over parts of South America. He did this by listening, by watching, and by quietly helping local leaders. Nobody saw him do it. But it happened, and it mattered. He knew that battles were not only fought with bombs. Battles were also fought with ideas, words, and secrets. He created a system where information moved like water through pipes. Fast, clean, and silent. He used special radios and codes. These were not toys. These were weapons of the future. His network stretched across the Americas, from Argentina to Canada, and even into the Caribbean. He had eyes in ports, in embassies, in companies. He trained people to read newspapers and find hidden meanings. He taught them to notice small things, a name that should not be there, a pattern in telegrams, a change in someone's story. He believed that knowledge was the key to power. And he knew how to use it. Back in London, people whispered his name. They said, "The quiet Canadian is watching." That made his enemies nervous. Even when he was far away, his influence was felt. He sent messages directly to Churchill, bypassing normal channels. Churchill trusted him like a brother. He once said, "Stephenson is the man called Intrepid." Some people later believed that was his secret code name, Intrepid. But the truth is unclear. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But it sounded right. William Stephenson was a man of many faces. And many secrets. After the war, he could have become very rich. He knew powerful people. He had helped save countries. He could have written books, given speeches, and made millions. But he didn't. He stayed in the shadows. He never talked about the agents he trained or the missions he planned. Many of those secrets are still hidden today. He understood something important: real spies do not tell their stories. That is why Ian Fleming's James Bond was so different. Bond talked. He chased. He made noise. But that was fiction. Fleming once joked, "Real spies are not like Bond. If they were, they would not last a week." But still, Bond was born from truth. He was born from the war. From fear. From bravery. From men like Stephenson. Fleming and Stephenson stayed friends after the war. They would meet in Jamaica and talk for hours. Fleming listened. He took small things from Stephenson's world and made them larger than life in his books. A secret weapon became a car with rockets. A quiet meeting in a hotel became a gunfight on a train. Bond was a dream, but the dream began in the real work of real men. Fleming once said that without Stephenson, there would be no James Bond. And maybe that is true. Stephenson's life teaches us something else, something deeper. It teaches us that true power does not shout. It listens. It thinks. It moves with care. In a world full of noise, the real James Bond was the man who said little, but did everything. In 1979, Stephenson published a book. Or at least, a book was published in his name. It was called A Man Called Intrepid. It told part of his story. But even that book did not tell everything. Some people said it made him look too perfect. Others said it didn't go far enough. But Stephenson didn't argue. He said what he always said, the work speaks for itself. When he died in 1989, he was 92 years old. He had lived a long, full life. Quietly. Calmly. With dignity. Flags in Canada were lowered. Leaders around the world gave speeches. Some called him the most important spy of the war. But many people still had no idea who he was. That's how he wanted it. His legacy lives on, not just in books and statues, but in the way intelligence agencies work today. He built the blueprint. Others followed it. And somewhere, deep inside every James Bond story, behind the bullets, behind the jokes, behind the tuxedo, there is a man from Winnipeg, who once said yes to a mission that changed the world. He never asked for thanks. He never needed applause. He just did the job. Time passed. The world changed. But the need for brave, silent people like William Stephenson never went away. Today, we live in a world full of cameras, satellites, and digital secrets. But the heart of intelligence work is still the same. It is about trust. It is about knowing when to speak, and when not to. It is about watching, thinking, and protecting others. That was Stephenson's way. Even after his death, many of the files about him remain secret. Some of them are still locked in government archives. His missions, his messages, and the names of the people he worked with, many of these are still unknown. Not because they are not important, but because they are too important to share. That is what it means to be a real spy. You do the job, and then you disappear. But slowly, people began to understand what he had done. Books were written. Films were made. Some tried to show him as a legend. Others tried to prove that the stories were too big. But the truth is simple, he helped win a world war not by fighting with a gun, but by building trust, creating networks, and staying 5 steps ahead of the enemy. And yes, he inspired a legend. Today, when we watch James Bond walk into a room with style and danger, we are really watching a ghost from the past. We are watching the shadow of a Canadian man who believed that one person, if brave and smart enough, could make a difference. Stephenson believed that the truth should be protected. But he also knew that lies could be used as weapons. He trained his agents to fight without fists. He taught them how to blend in, how to notice a clue, how to create a story and live inside it. This takes more than courage. It takes control. And William Stephenson had it. In London, his name is sometimes spoken in quiet corners. In Ottawa, he is remembered with honor. In Washington, the CIA remembers him as one of the founders of modern intelligence. In New York, where his office once stood behind false doors, his work helped change the course of history. He was not just a spy. He was a teacher of spies. He made the impossible seem possible. He did it all without seeking fame. Think about that. Today, so many people want to be known. They post pictures, chase attention, try to be seen. But Stephenson did the opposite. He worked in secret. He gave others the tools they needed and stayed behind the curtain. He proved that real strength is quiet. That real heroes don't need to be loud. And perhaps that's why the world still respects him. Every time a James Bond movie begins, with the music and the danger and the charm, we are reminded of something older and more serious. Bond may be fiction. But he was born in a real war, made by real people who risked their lives in silence. He was born from the courage of William Stephenson. When Ian Fleming was asked about Stephenson again near the end of his life, he smiled and said, "He was the best." That says everything. Fleming had met many spies, many agents, many men who wore the badge of intelligence. But Stephenson stood above them. Not because he was louder, or more violent, but because he was wiser, and calmer, and always thinking. And what about us? What can we learn from a man like Stephenson? Maybe this, that even in a noisy world, silence can be powerful. That even in dangerous times, one good person can make a difference. That intelligence is not only about secrets, but about service. Stephenson did not fight for glory. He fought for peace. He did not chase fame. He chased truth. And he did it all behind the scenes. So next time you see James Bond order a martini, think of the man who never drank in public. When Bond jumps from a rooftop, think of the man who preferred to walk through the front door unnoticed. When Bond flirts with danger, remember the man who avoided it with quiet skill. The real James Bond didn't drive an Aston Martin. He walked into history and left no footprints. His name was William Stephenson. He was the spy who built the future. He was the man who whispered in a world full of shouting. And somehow, the world listened. Thank you for listening to this story. If you liked it, write about it in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.